The air hung thick with the metallic tang of fresh blood, seeping from the stone floors where beasts had been slain just hours before. Whispers echoed through the shadowed halls, soft cries muffled by heavy curtains, the distant roar of a crowd still ringing from the arena. You slip past the guards, their eyes averted in shame, into a chamber where torches flicker over bodies entwined in forced embrace. Silk sheets stain red under the weight of it all. A figure emerges from the steam of baths, clad in a lion's skin, club in hand, his laughter cutting like a blade. He calls for more, always more, but tonight, one among them whispers a plan that could end it. This wasn't the end. Not yet. What you're about to hear involves sexual violence and systematic humiliation woven into the fabric of power. These events, drawn from ancient accounts, are as disturbing as they are documented. If you need to step away, I understand. For those staying, we focus on understanding the system, not exploiting the suffering. The scene fades, but the echo lingers. This wasn't random cruelty from a deranged mind. This was a calculated machine, oiled by fear and desire, designed to break the backbone of an empire. Commodus, son of the philosopher king Marcus Aurelius, inherited the throne in the late 2nd century, when Rome sprawled from Britain's misty shores to the sun-baked sands of Egypt. The empire hummed with trade, legions guarded vast frontiers, and the Senate, once the heart of republican glory, now bowed to imperial whim. But beneath the marble facades, tensions simmered. Border threats from Germanic tribes, economic strains from endless wars, and a ruling class whispering of lost freedoms. Commodus didn't just rule, he reshaped loyalty into submission, using pleasure as a weapon to dismantle dissent. What started as private indulgences grew into a nightly ritual that ensnared the daughters of Rome's elite, turning their bodies into symbols of his dominance. This system didn't just humiliate, it eroded the very foundations of power, leading to a collapse that echoed through centuries. Why revisit this now? Because in the ruins, we see how unchecked authority devours its own. Picture a boy born into purple robes, not the mud of battlefields. Commodus entered the world in the summer of 161 at a villa near Rome, twin to a brother who wouldn't survive long. His father, Marcus Aurelius, was no ordinary man, a stoic thinker who penned meditations on duty while leading legions against barbarian hordes along the Danube. The empire then was a colossus. Its armies stretched thin, defending borders against Marcomanni and Quadi warriors who raided with axes and fury. Marcus groomed his son for rule, dragging him to frozen camps where soldiers drilled under gray skies. The air smelled of smoke from campfires, the clang of swords, a constant rhythm. Young Commodus learned the arts of war, but his heart drifted elsewhere. He watched gladiators spar, their muscles glistening with sweat, and dreamed of the arena's roar. Trauma shaped him early. His twin died young, a shadow that lingered. Then, in his teens, a plague ravaged the empire, claiming millions, perhaps even twisting Commodus with illness that left him scarred. Marcus, ever the philosopher, taught restraint, but the boy chafed. He craved spectacle, the thrill of the hunt. By 177, at 16, he stood as co-emperor, his father's heir apparent. They toured the east together, initiating into ancient mysteries at Eleusis, where torchlight dances promised divine insight. But whispers grew. Commodus favored flatterers over sages, dice games over debates. Then came the turning point. In the spring of 180, Marcus lay dying in a frontier camp, his body racked by fever. The air stank of medicinal herbs and unwashed soldiers. He urged his son to continue the wars, to honor Rome's legacy. Commodus nodded, but his mind raced elsewhere. Within months of his father's death, he abandoned the front lines, signing hasty treaties that left borders fragile. Back in Rome, the city buzzed with relief, no more taxes for distant fights. But Commodus saw opportunity. He purged his father's advisors, those stern men who preached virtue. One by one, they vanished into exile or graves. The machine began to whir, a network of spies, informants in every tavern, Praetorian guards enforcing whims. He devalued the currency, flooding markets with weaker coins to fund his pleasures. The Senate, once proud, now trembled. This wasn't inheritance. This was reinvention, and at its core, a harem that would bind the elite in chains of shame. The palace on the Palatine Hill loomed over Rome like a watchful beast, its halls a labyrinth of marble and gold. Torches sputtered in brackets, casting long shadows on frescoes of gods and conquests. The air carried scents of incense from eastern spices, mixed with the faint rot of excess. Here, in the heart of empire, Commodus built his system. Guards patrolled the gates, their armor clinking softly. Informants whispered names of the disloyal, and every evening, as the sun dipped below the 7 hills, the chambers filled. She was known as Lucilla, a woman of sharp intellect and noble blood, his own sister, daughter of the late emperor. In her early 30s, she moved through the court with the grace of one raised in power. Her days had been spent in villas by the sea, discussing philosophy with scholars, her marriage to a general securing alliances. She wore fine silks, her hair pinned with ivory combs, a life of privilege that masked growing unease. Lucilla had watched her brother's ascent with dread. Whispers reached her. Senators dragged from homes, their properties seized. She gathered allies in quiet gardens, plotting to restore sanity. The confrontation came one humid evening. Commodus summoned her to his private baths, steam rising from heated pools. The water lapped gently, scented with rose oil. Guards stood outside, their faces impassive. He lounged on a couch, wine goblet in hand, his eyes gleaming with something darker than brotherly affection. "Join me," he said, his voice smooth but edged. "The empire demands unity." Lucilla refused, her words sharp as daggers, reminding him of their father's legacy, the stoic path forsaken. Anger flashed across his face. He offered a choice: submit or face exile. She stood firm, her heart pounding. What followed was restrained in the accounts, but the implication clear. He forced her into his circle, a symbol of absolute control, not just her body, but her spirit broken in those chambers. Guards ensured silence. The act wasn't passion, it was power. Lucilla emerged, changed, her defiance cracked. Word spread through the Senate like poison. If even the emperor's sister wasn't safe, who was? This wasn't about one woman. This was about the machine, selecting daughters and wives from elite families. Rumors of hundreds gathered, their beauty a ticket to humiliation. Spies noted who resisted taxes or whispered against him. Their kin paid the price. The harem grew, a web entangling the powerful. Historians debate the exact scale, but accounts suggest up to 300 women, drawn from matrons and others, forced into nightly rituals. Commodus watched, directed, his gladiatorial club nearby, blending violence with desire. Blood from arena fights sometimes stained the floors, a grim reminder. One brief, modern parallel. Think of how dictators today use scandal to silence opposition. But here, it was ancient, raw. Lucilla's story breathed life into the numbers, a human face on the system's gears. The machine didn't stop at the palace walls. It spread like vines over Rome's stones, choking the city. Shift now to the view of a chamberlain, one of those shadowy figures pulling strings in the emperor's name. He was a freedman, risen from nothing, his tunic embroidered with gold thread earned through loyalty. Commodus trusted him with the list's names of senators whose daughters caught the eye. The chamberlain moved through forums, his sandals silent on mosaic floors, delivering summonses wrapped in silk. Refusal meant ruin. Estates confiscated, families exiled. As the years ticked by 3, then 5, the escalation hit. Commodus no longer hid behind curtains. He paraded his excesses in the arena, where sand soaked up blood from beasts and men. Mornings brought hunts. He slew lions with arrows, their roars echoing off tiered seats. Afternoons, gladiatorial bouts where he played the hero, his opponents yielding to sharpened blades. Evenings blurred the lines. Women from the harem appeared in spectacles, forced to attend, their faces pale under veils. One account tells of a night when blood from a felled elephant splashed the imperial box, and Commodus laughed, pulling a woman close amid the cheers. The system incentivized betrayal. Guards got bonuses for deliveries, informants rose in rank. Whole neighborhoods emptied as families fled, but borders were watched. Numbers swelled, not precise counts, but villages' worth of lives disrupted. A breather here, amid the horror and ironic detail. Commodus, identifying as Hercules, wore a lion's skin to bed, its mane tickling the women he claimed as prizes. Beauty amid brutality, the pelt from a beast he'd slain himself. From a survivor's eyes, it looked different. One woman, escaped through bribes, later whispered tales in distant provinces. She spoke of chambers where silk met steel, desires enforced at sword point. The machine targeted variety: young, old, noble, common. But the elite suffered most, their shame a leash on their fathers' votes in the Senate. Resistance sparked purges, senators executed on false plots, their daughters absorbed. What happened next would test the empire's limits. She had seen enough to plot her own escape, slipping away under moonless skies. Time jumped forward, the pace quickening like a chariot race. By the early 190 seconds, Commodus's grip tightened. He renamed Rome after himself, a colossal insult. Statues rose everywhere, him as Hercules, club raised. The Senate chanted his praises, their voices hollow. But cracks appeared. Riots over grain shortages turned bloody, mobs clashing with guards in narrow streets. The climax built in those final months. Commodus planned his grandest spectacle, appearing as consul and gladiator on New Year's Day, 193. The air in the palace grew thick with paranoia. He compiled lists: senators, advisors, even favorites marked for death. One name stood out: Marcia, his favored concubine, a woman of cunning beauty who'd shared his bed for years. In her mid-20s, she'd risen from humble origins, her dark hair framing eyes that missed nothing. She attended his baths, poured his wine, endured his whims. But now, discovering her fate, she acted. The breaking point came that winter evening. Steam rose in curls from the bathhouse, water heated by underground fires. Commodus lounged, muscles sore from arena practice. Marcia offered wine, laced with poison from hidden vials. He drank deeply, the taste bitter but masked by spices. Nausea hit like a wave. He vomited, the plan faltering. Enter the wrestler, a burly man trained in the sands, summoned as backup. He entered quietly, the water splashing softly. Commodus, weakened, struggled, hands clamped around his throat. Bubbles rose. The emperor thrashed, his eyes bulging in the dim light. The crack wasn't just his neck, it was the machine shuddering. Resistance, born from within, toppled him. Marcia watched, her face a mask. The system, built on fear, crumbled when fear turned inward. In the hours after, the palace hushed. Commodus lay still, his body wrapped in linens. Marcia, the chamberlain Eclectus, and Praetorian prefect Laetus moved fast. They proclaimed Pertinax emperor, a steady general to calm the storm. But the aftermath rippled wide. The Senate, long cowed, erupted in fury, declaring Commodus an enemy, smashing his statues in forums where crowds cheered. Names reverted. Rome was Rome again. His body, meant for a grand tomb, was dragged through streets, hooked like a criminal. Survivors emerged, scarred. Lucilla had perished years earlier, exiled to an island and slain on his orders. Families reclaimed what they could, but wounds festered. Power shifted chaotically. The year of 5 emperors followed, civil wars tearing legions apart. Long-term, the empire weakened, borders frayed, economy staggered from his debasements. One ironic detail: the documents meant to glorify him became fuel for his damnation, historians quoting them to warn future rulers. Centuries passed, the palace ruins overgrown with vines. Then, in modern times, discoveries breathed life into the tales. Archaeologists unearthed the Passage of Commodus in the Colosseum, a hidden tunnel from the early 2nd century, vaulted and dim, used perhaps for his secret entries to games. Found during restorations in the 1,810 seconds and reopened recently, it snakes under the arena, walls etched with faded graffiti. Teams from Rome's Archaeological Park, led by experts like those in recent digs, pieced together fragments, depictions of spectacles, remnants of decorative elements tied to blood sports. In Genzano, southeast of Rome, a mini-Colosseum emerged from earth, an oval arena tied to his villa, where private games mixed with pleasures. Excavations in the 2010 seconds revealed thermal baths, seats for crowds, proof of his obsession. These finds, tangible as the stones themselves, confirm the scale. Not just stories, but built environments for his machine. A human touch. One digger described brushing dirt from a mosaic, feeling the emperor's gaze through time. Why does this matter today? It teaches how power, unchecked, corrupts from within, echoing in modern scandals where leaders use personal vices to control elites. Think of authoritarian regimes where families become leverage, shame a tool for silence. The universal truth: Humanity's dark side thrives in isolation, but resistance, even from the intimate circle, can shatter it. Commodus sought godhood, he found mortality. Echo that opening chamber. The bloodstains faded, the cries silenced. What changed? The machine broke, but its lessons endure. Victims like Lucilla were meant to vanish into history's shadows, but they didn't. They survive in chronicles, in unearthed stones, in the memory we keep alive. And now they're here with you, because you chose to listen. If this story moved you, drop a comment below. What echoes of Commodus do you see in today's world? Subscribe for more dives into history's hidden depths. In the end, power is fleeting, but stories like this, they outlast empires.